Which is the best driver of 2021? I've put all of this year's best models head to head to find out. Have done a seriously impressive job with the aesthetics of the TSI lineup. In particular, I love the shaping of the TSI 3, especially the softer toe shaping we've got here. You can really see why this has been a huge hit on tour with the smaller, more compact profile. But in terms of performance, it was actually the TSI 2 that I hit the best. The stability was so good, especially on off-centre strikes. I really couldn't believe just how straight my ball flight was. The distance was also really good on this, and I gained 10 yards on the last year's TS2 with the same clubhead speed, which is definitely pretty impressive. These have to take the crown for the best looking new drivers of 2021. The carbon curves on the sole are just so satisfying, and what's not to love about that electric blue and yellow colour combination? Now, in terms of performance, these were both extremely long, but it was the Sim 2 that was actually the longest by a grand total of 3 yards. But for me, the forgiveness was actually a lot better with the Max, and overall I would say this was the one that gave me the most stability on off-centre strikes. I always think tailor-made drivers are slightly draw biased, and these were no different, but they also have the D model in this range, which is definitely going to help you straighten out that ball flight if you're a slicer. The forgiveness was the standout factor across the Callaway range, and unsurprisingly it was the Max model which gave me the tightest dispersion. Overall, this Epic range is more draw biased than we saw in the Maverick last year, thanks to this lighter carbon panel in the toe. The Epic Max LS is a new concept in this range, and it offers a low spin offering in a bigger, more forgiving head. Now, all the high speed players that I have tested this with have really loved this, because they still get that low spin and height that they're after, but they're getting that forgiveness that wasn't previously available in the Callaway lineup. The Ping G424 drivers are their best looking to date, and I love this new slate and black colourway, especially the way it comes into their stock shafts. The Max offering was my favourite out of the 3 models this year, and it offered the most distance and forgiveness. Out of this range, I also think the SFT model is going to be a huge hit with good golfers, because the straight fly technology is one of the best I've seen at neutralising that left to right shot shape and giving people a straighter, more draw biased flight. I love the new matte finish on the top of the Cobra Radspeed driver, and overall across the whole range I really do like this yellow and black colourway. Out of the 2, the Radspeed flew the furthest in this line by a grand total of 3 yards, and it was also 8 yards longer than last year's Speed Zone. But out of the 2, it was definitely the Radspeed XB that had the best dispersion, and it was just a little bit more forgiving. It also launched slightly higher, so definitely good for those people who need a little bit extra launch off the tee. Last year I found the Speed Zone sat slightly open, so my dispersion finished slightly right of the target, whereas this year both of these offerings were a lot more neutral, which I definitely preferred. For the second year in a row, Wilson's driver was one of the longest in the test, averaging at 230 yards for carry distance. The lightweight nature of the D9 made it super easy to launch, get a great ball flight, and it was just really easy to hit overall. The overall dispersion and forgiveness was very solid too, and I would say it was also slightly draw biased. Mizuno are renowned for the feel of their irons, but the STZ drivers were just as good. These were definitely the best feeling drivers I tested this year. I also really love the aesthetics and feel like Mizuno have really stepped this up in recent years. This was one of the longest drivers in the test, averaging 233.6 yards, and my longest shots were going up over the 240 mark, which I was definitely seriously impressed with. It's really easy to see why some of the longest hitters on tour have started to put these in play. The dispersion was pretty consistent with this too, and I really liked the fact it was very neutral down the target line. I can't believe I had never hit a Strixon driver before testing out the ZX7, and it didn't disappoint, racking up some great numbers. I also really loved the aesthetics, especially this red and black colour scheme. The front to back dispersion with this was the best in test, thanks to some seriously consistent carry distance numbers. In fact, half of my shots carried exactly the same distance, which is pretty crazy. With some impressive ball speed numbers, this also nearly snuck into the top 3 for carry distance. The lightweight nature of the Honma GS made it really easy to hit and also produced some seriously impressive carry distances. I had a very draw bias ball flight with this, and in fact I didn't miss a single shot right of the middle of the fairway, which is pretty impressive. So if you're someone who's looking to straighten out a slice, this is definitely going to work really well for you. I produced some really long shots with this club, with my average carry distance getting up into the 230s. While the spin was a fraction on the low side for me, I think someone who struggles with a high spinning right shot is going to see loads of benefits from this in terms of ball flight and lowering that spin. This has to be one of the most unusual crown designs out there, but I love the pop of blue colour and actually think it makes the club head look smaller behind the golf ball. Although I was racking up good carry distances this, my favourite thing was actually the forgiveness, and I felt like I had really good stability on my off-centre strikes. Overall, this model also felt super easy to hit and was launching really high, so perfect for those golfers who need a little bit of extra height on the drives, which would definitely give you extra carry distance too. McGregor's latest driver offering is designed for players with mid to low club head speeds, and on that front it really hits the target market perfectly, as it is really easy to launch and hit. Aesthetics wise, this is really giving me kind of racing car vibes with the pops of yellow and the textures on the corner of here. And I think loads of people are going to love the matte black colour on the top because it really helps reduce glare and distractions behind the golf ball. At its lower price point, this is really a steal and is perfect for beginners and those coming back to the game. Okay, so that's the lowdown on how each of the drivers performed and what I was most impressed with. But which of these models were my favourite? Well, it's hard because there's so many different categories. But first up, let's talk distance, because that's what so many people want to know about. The three longest models in this test were the Mizuno STZ, the TaylorMade Sim Max, and then the Wilson D9. Then if we're looking at the clubs that were most forgiving, it was actually the Ping G425, then the Callaway Epic Match and the Titleist TSI2. I think for lots of people, you really have to balance that distance and dispersion and see what's going to enhance your game the most. Draw bias drivers are a seriously large part of the market now, and I have to say the Ping SFT was super impressive and really helped straighten out those left to right ball flights. Looks are always down to personal preference, but for me there was a few that really stood out. I love the funky crown that we see on the TaylorMade Sim 2 offerings. I also love that classic black gloss finish on the top of the Titleist TSI models and love the shaping work they've done there, but I also really love that new matte colouring on the Cobra Rad Speed. Again, feel is a personal preference, but the Mizuno STZ really stood out as well as the Titleist TSI range. Finally, value for money. It's such an important category and there was two standout winners here. The Wilson D9 was super impressive, as was the Cobra Rad Speed and the McGregor V-Foil Speed. Okay, but which driver is going in my bag for this year? Well, the visuals of this driver stood out for me straight away. And I also loved the really impressive carry distances and the forgiveness of the TaylorMade Sim 2 Max. So this year that is going in my bag along with the KBS TD60 shaft. Right, that's all for today. If you have any questions about any of these drivers, feel free to put them in the comments below or drop me a line on Twitter or Instagram. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications too. And if you're after more golf content, head to the National Club Golfer social media channels for more.